Hey everybody, so today I want to show you how to sharpen your chainsaw chain square filed using the ATOP racing guide or jig. Let's get right at it. Hey everybody, welcome to Good Day Farm. And so today we're going to do a quick video on how to sharpen your chainsaw chain square ground or square filing. So if you're watching this and you're not exactly sure what the differences are in the different types of filing, and you've maybe heard this term here and there or read about it on the internet, square filing, square grind, I'll explain a little bit more about that later in the video. But right now what I want to show is I just kind of started getting into this, and I was fortunate enough to have somebody send me a chain that had been properly ground on a dedicated grinder. These grinders are pretty expensive. I don't have one, obviously. You know, it wouldn't be practical for what little bit I do. The style of filing seems to be real popular in from what I've found out on the West Coast, where guys are falling big trees, or just with fallers in general. Not real popular with firewood cutting people, and also pretty popular with the competitive race chain, you know, the guys that saw the cookies, you know, for time. So anyhow, it's a really fast cutting chain, sharp. It has its pros and cons. We'll talk about that also a little bit later. But right now, let's just get into how I use the, it's the ATOP jig. At least I think I'm saying that right. It's ATOP. Not a lot of information on this jig. I got it used from somebody, so no directions on how to use it or anything like that. I know originally they were sold in some areas with 3 sets of guides to change the angles for different, you know, profiles on the chain. Mine just came with 1. It seems to do a really good job. It definitely makes it easy. You don't have to worry as much about how you're holding the file. You still have to pay attention, but anyhow, you'll see when I get it set up here. So let's just take a look at how that works, and we'll go from there. All right, so with your saw, I recommend putting it in some kind of vise bar clamp. You want the saw to be pretty solid for when you get ready to file. That's kind of what the chain, like I said, this is a brand new out of the box RSL chain. My lighting's not great in here, so it's going to be hard to show you, but you can see how the square chisel, full chisel style there, it gives me, you know, it's a very square edge, or they call it, that's why it's the RSL, because that's an L shape, unlike a semi chisel that would be kind of rounded. And then if we can get in here, yeah, my lighting's not that great, but trying to show you that inside profile. Anyhow, so this is the ATOP jig here, and then it just sets over the bar. It's got it's only got 1 adjusting screw there. It's not, I'm sorry, not adjusting screw, 1 locking screw. That's the screw that holds it. You'll tighten that down to hold it to the bar. These are roller guides. The file rolls across these. That's those are what help keep your angle. And then this is like the stop that keeps the chain, you know, like your depth stop on like a Grand Bridge style jig. So you just slip it over the chain and bar, just drop it down, and then put these 2 things in the U here in between cutter links, and then just tighten it down. Check to make sure that your chain can still roll. You may have to raise it up just a little bit or whatever, but you know, pretty much this just drops down low. I'm going to put the camera in the tripod now and kind of show you how it's all set up, and we'll file a tooth. Give you a better look of how that should be set up. So one thing to note, this jig is designed to work with a full comp chain, and that's because if this cutter wasn't here, like on a skip tooth, it wouldn't be, you know, as easy to adjust to line up. I'm sure you could still do it. I haven't tried it yet on a skip tooth one. I might, just to see, but this is what the jig's designed to work with, the full comp. And I may be setting this up wrong. I don't know. This is just where it works for me. I bought this jig used. It had no instructions, and there are very limited instructions online. So this is just how it looks like it works best to me. And what it does is that's the cutter tooth that I'm going to be filing. So it leaves that one out so that my file will come across here and cross this roller again. And then one last thing, it was recommended to me by some people that were helping me when I first was learning how to do this, wedge something between the chain and the bar. Depending on how tight you have your chain, the scrunch works pretty well. Sometimes I'll just throw in like a small wedge. The point of that is you want this chain, while you're filing up here, you want this chain basically as tight as can be so that the tooth doesn't have, you know, the chain doesn't have any movement or very little movement. That's why you'll see, I think, a lot of guys that are hand filing these actually take the chain off the saw and they put it in a vise. And there's all kinds of vices for that. Homemade ones out of vice grips or whatever, but that way they can really lock that tooth down so they can file it. And that's where I want to get. Was my just learning how to do this using the ATOP. Once I get really comfortable with that flow and getting the angles right, I'll probably end up just switching to all freehand off the bar. From what I've seen of other people doing it, that probably looks like the best way. Anyhow, let me show you what it looks like to file. So I'm not sure how well you guys are going to be able to see that on the camera, but so here's my file up against the tooth. So that line that we were talking about that needs to come up into the point of the tooth, on the double bevel file, you see how you've got like a point where the bevel comes together here on the file, and then you've got an edge up here on the top. So this top edge, get it in the camera here, sorry, is actually that point that you want to line up to the very corner of your cutter there. That inside point of the double bevel, that's the one that's causing that second line that I showed on the cutter tooth down below. And then this face here, that's what's creating that face on the inside of the cutter tooth. Hope that makes sense. So what I do is put it in the jig. The steeper the angle you can get, from what I understand, is the better. So you don't want it, you know, too much out like this on the edge of the roller up here. I don't know if that's getting in the camera shot. So I try and keep it as close to the back or inside of the guide, and then just keep that point. Let's see if I got something to point with here. So this edge of the file lined up to the point of the cutter here, and then this inside edge is going to line up to that inside there. And then you just, what I do is with my thumb, you know, I'm holding the tip of the file down against this roller, and then it'll kind of rest in here if you have a factory ground one, so it kind of follows the existing cut that's already there. But I like to put just a little bit of upward pressure, just enough to make sure I'm keeping that lined up there. Not too aggressive, you know, I don't want to come up too high. See how that point comes up here above the cutter tooth? If I was to keep filing like that, then all of a sudden I'd have a weird beak up here. Worst case scenario, if I let it ride and cut down low, the chain would still cut. Not as good as doing it this way, but you know, it wouldn't stay as sharp as long, but it would still cut. So what a lot of people say, they call that a beak when you create that up, you know, edge either below or above where the point is. And if you're gonna have a beak, they say go lower than higher. The higher one, it just won't cut at all. So I'm gonna try and take a few strokes here. It's a little grabby because it's the first time that it's been filed and my table's not real solid, so if it shakes the camera, I apologize. And then I'll run 1 or 2 strokes just to kind of get it, you know, you'll start to feel it smooth out. And then that's, once it, you know, kind of gets smoother, that's probably enough. You know, it shouldn't take a whole lot. That was pretty smooth there. That should be about it. Looks really simple. I know this is probably an over explanation of how to do it. It's a lot harder. Well, I won't say a lot harder, but it is harder than it looks. It's hard to make sure you keep that file in the point corner where you want it. But that's the concept right there. And then all you would do when you're ready to go to your next tooth, pull your scrunch or wedge out from down below here, and then you got to pull. Oops, it's not getting in the camera. Sorry. You got to pull these U's out, and then just roll the chain to where you get the next cutter lined up that you want. Bump it up till it locks in like that, or not locks in, but it's tight. And now we're in line to do the next cutter. Hope that's self-explanatory, or you know, I hope that makes sense to you guys. The whole point of this jig is it would be muscle memory. It helps teach you, what downward angle you want to keep, so that when you, for me anyhow, so that when I go to freehanding, I'll have an idea, of where I should be. But like I said, keep it in, the steeper the angle you can have in towards the bar and right into the point of this, the better it's going to be sharper. Now, since this is a brand new chain, like I said, it didn't take much. I just kind of wanted to knock the factory filings off. There's not much of a gullet here, but just like any other chain, you have to pay attention to this gullet. And so as I file this chain, as it works its way back, this down lower section, the gullet here, is going to not get filed away. And then that'll slow your chain down just like it would on a round file. So you need to come in here and knock that out periodically. You don't want this little ledge up here to get much bigger than it is right there. So I like to remove that gullet first, just with a standard round file, using a 7/32, just like I would for my round file chains. And then I'll just run it in there and at the same angle. So in theory, even that gullet edge is sharp. Now this is where there's probably, everybody's got their own way of doing things on these chains. You've got people like me that just are kind of doing a grind or filing for what I would call a work chain. And then you've got people that are competitive and do race filings, so they're going to get really creative and aggressive in how they remove that gullet. They probably got special files for it, specific ones, smaller diameter. They can really get under there and cut it all out. And for them, that's all about speed and stuff. But for a work chain, for what I'm doing, that my regular 7/32 file is fine. It could go a little smaller, probably wouldn't hurt anything. But basically, I want to keep that gullet removed, as close to the tie straps here as possible without eating into the tie strap and weakening the chain. So I hope that makes sense. I apologize for the poor lighting here. I know this is part of the problem. I want to make a video and share how this is done, but then my camera equipment is lacking, so I can't show it real well. All right, so I said I would talk a little bit about the differences in square filing, square ground, and round filing, round ground. Now this, again, I'm no expert. I'm very new to the square filing, square grind. So I could be misinformed. I could, be wrong on some of this. So please, if you know better, or whatever, feel free to share in the comments, because this is a learning process for me. And I don't have anybody locally. I don't have a mentor. I don't have anyone that I can lean on to get good information on this. I've been very fortunate that, like I said, I had somebody that mailed me. It was someone through Facebook, through the internet. Saw that I was interested in this kind of stuff and sent me one of their chains that they, like I said, that they did on their grinder. And that really, one, let me try the chain to see how great it cut, and it is. They're phenomenal. And two, so I could kind of see how the angles should look and all that. So I really appreciate that, and that's been an instrumental help in doing this. So if you're watching this video, if you've been looking into square filing, square ground, I'm sure you've heard a lot of back and forth. Some people swear by it, say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Other people say it's not worth all the effort and work, and it's really tough and difficult to do. And I would say it's a little of both. So why bother? Why do it? Well, for me personally, I like, I'm learning since I was a kid, or a teenager, I guess. I always like looking for a better way to do something. Now, with that said, does that mean you personally have to define what better is? So I may do a little more work to get this chain filed the way I want it, but if I'm out in the woods and it's cutting quicker, faster, easier, that's the thing I noticed when I used the chain that was given to me, is the ease that it cut with. I mean, the saw didn't even feel like it was having to work, man. It just went in the wood and just cut it. And I'll say, I sharpen my normal chains phenomenally, and they cut really, really well, but I've never cut anything as well as that did. So with that said, to me, that's better. So it's a trade-off, maybe it's a little more work to get it sharpened. Maybe you got to be a little more careful when you're using it so you don't dull it up, because it would be difficult to sharpen it out in the woods or out on the job site. I would definitely recommend carrying a couple extra ones, that are sharpened and ready to go. So all that said, for me currently, I think it's a good way to go. It cuts really, really fast. They're really sharp. And like I said, they tend to, it seems like the saw doesn't have to work as hard to do the same that it would with a round ground. It's how the old loggers filed their chains. I mean, round ground is probably, I would have to Google this, so don't quote me on my dates here, but probably, relatively new, like from the 60s or so. I think before that, everybody square ground. My dad, who's a West Coast logger, did both. I mean, he had saws that were set up both ways. Unfortunately, he never really took the time to show us kids what he was doing and how he did, because he didn't want any of us to be loggers. He didn't think it was a good life, both financially and physically. It was too hard to work and too dangerous, and he didn't want to see any of his kids become loggers. So he never took the time to show us stuff. And so everything I've learned has kind of was on my own, and after I left home, and then after he passed away, just having to figure stuff out on my own. So anyhow, I would say, try it if you think you're interested. If you have somebody that can show you or give you a chain that they've sharpened properly, that would be tremendous. If not, just really, scour the internet. There are some really, really good resources out there. Some good websites, some forums where people that, especially the competitors that really get into this. And that's where you got to draw the line. So are you trying to develop a race chain? I'm not. I just want a good work chain. So some of the race chains, they do stuff where they talk about tunneling, and they'll get in there and remove a ton of material, but they're only using that chain for 3 cuts and they throw it away. I'm not doing that. So, they can make an even faster chain than I'm making, but what I want is something faster and better than my typical round ground. And I feel like if I can get good enough at it, the time trade-off will be worth it. The other thing is that you have to consider too is there may be a little more expense with the square grind. For sure, the files cost more, considerably more compared to a round ground file, but they last longer too. So it's probably a trade-off. It's probably a wash. And then there's not a lot of, if you're somebody that needs guides or assistance to get the angles correct, there's just not a lot of that out there. It basically is you buy $1,000 grinder for grinding these chains, or you do it by freehand, and you may or may not be getting it right freehand. And I've read a lot of stuff where that's a lot of why people just give up on it, because they tried freehanding it and their chains weren't as sharp as they thought they should be, and they just didn't have good results, so they gave up on it. If you're fortunate enough to live in an area where square ground is very common, and you have local shops that can grind them for you, I would say definitely do it. Go buy a loop. They're basically, the ones I buy are exactly the same price as a regular chain. Go buy a loop and have that shop service it. If it's a reputable shop, if you're in an area that has like good pro logging shops. I'm not. I'm in farm country, and guys around here, half the people I've met don't even sharpen chains. Once they get too blunt to use, they'll throw them away and buy a new one. So if you're fortunate enough to live in an area where that, then you'll really get a feel for it, and then maybe you can try doing it by hand. But it's not going to be any quicker to file. It's actually going to take you a lot longer to file by hand, and I get that even from the guys that do this day in and day out. It takes more time, but they stay sharp. These are the pros to it. They stay sharp longer if you're only cutting wood with it, if you're not hitting rocks and dirt and things like that. They cut extremely fast, extremely sharp. And so, especially for fallers of big timber, that's all very, very important. The quicker they can get in and get their cut done and get out of the way, it's safe. It makes this, in my opinion, the saw is going to run and last longer because it's not having to work as hard to do the same amount of work. It's all trade-offs, and it's all, helps. So that said, I hope I answered all the questions, or gave you some information. This is not meant to be a do-all, cover all the bases instructional video. I just kind of wanted to show, as I get better at it, maybe I'll do another video, and for sure when I start freehanding, I'll do one on that to show you guys how I do that. But I just wanted to show the ATOP jig. the information on those is kind of scarce. They're hard to find, but they're still available. You can still buy them. Bailey's online has them, I think. They're not cheap. I was lucky. I got mine used from a guy that no longer was interested in this kind of stuff, and I got it for a really good price. So I'm not complaining. But the it's a little more work for sure. Here's the big thing to take away from this: square filing or square ground is not as forgiving as round ground. So like the things like keeping the chain tight so the tooth doesn't wobble when you're filing it, all those kind of things, having the file at the right angle, all that kind of stuff, very, very, very important. You have to have that corner of the cutter, that chisel, sharp, pointed. If your beak's under it, it'll still cut, but not very good. If it's over it and you got like the ledges up on top, horrible, not going to work. So you have to be very precise and take your time. And if you like that kind of stuff, then I think you'll find it's almost meditative. I kind of get into, I don't have a problem with that. So it's just like, to me, it's like taking a straight razor to a whetstone, or taking I got some Japanese style kitchen cutlery. And, you just have to be patient, and you take your time. And I like when I have the time to do that. It's just kind of a decompression time, clear your mind, and, you get up at your bench or wherever you do your work, and you just take your time, and you'll be so impressed with the results you get. And it's ultra satisfying. Not only you got to free your mind and only focus on one thing for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long it takes you, but then you get the results of it. And that's kind of what I get out of it. So, and then when I go cut wood, it cuts great, throws chips like nobody's business. It'll just burn through the wood. If you're out cutting against a buddy, they're going to look at you like you got some souped up supercars chainsaw. And that's what I was saying before. You don't necessarily need more power or bigger saw to cut bigger wood. You need the proper chains and filings and all that. So I'm gonna sign off with that right there, I think. And please comment down below. I'm sure a lot of people watching this will know way more than I do about it, and I look forward to hearing inputs and ideas and suggestions and corrections. I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes and misspoke on things, and that's all fine. This is, like I said, it's new to me, and I don't have a mentor. I don't have somebody to hand down this skill to me. From what I've seen, it's like an ancient Chinese secret. It's a lost skill. It's a forgotten skill. Especially in my part of the country. I mean, people here don't even know what you're talking about when you talk about it. And then I'm also finding to really consistently do it right, seems like people rely on grinders, which is great. But for some reason, the grinders for this type of chain are very expensive, and there's currently only one manufacturer that makes them. There used to be two. The other one's no longer in business, so the used unit, and they made a really good unit, Sylvie. There's used, go for more sometimes than the other brands, new ones. Symington's the other one. So all neat stuff. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Please share your comments and let me know what you think. And if I missed something, maybe we can do another video and talk about it again later. So thanks, you guys. I appreciate you watching. Have a great day, and good luck with your square filing adventures. Thank you. Bye.